Healthcare corruption in the USA. So the problem. Here's a fact that I got off a source by Emily H. Glenn, and she reported that approximately 455 billion of the 7.35 trillion spent on healthcare annually worldwide is lost each year to fraud and corruption. So the biggest industry in the United States is healthcare, and around 10% is wasted from fraud. And being the world's biggest gross domestic product, it has the worst performing healthcare system for countries with high GDPs. Um, I will be talking about some specific components that cause this fraud and corruption, the 455 billion. I'm not going to be able to cover it all, but here is some noteworthy things to look at. So, as you can see, the United States spends the most amount of money per capita on healthcare, but they don't have the best results. For average life expectancy, they're on slightly below average. Infant mortality rate is slightly below average again, and obesity and diabetes is about the highest. So, let me give a brief definition of corruption by the Webster Dictionary is a dishonest or illegal behavior, especially by powerful people. An important two ways that is most commonly seen in the healthcare section is by bribery, which is people asking for money so they can promote their product, or embezzlement, where they will take the funds given by the healthcare sector and use it for their own personal expenses rather than helping the people that need it most. Or it can be little things like cheating or stuff like that. It's a broad definition. So the 3 points I'll be talking about today are pharmaceutical kickbacks, overbilling or inaccurate claims, and misleading advertisements. I want to look at this real quick. This is, if it was in a perfect world, how healthcare systems should be brought out. The governments are the ones who regulate and draft the policy. The payers are the ones who fund the system. And the reason there's payers for this system is because America runs on a private healthcare industry where it's funded by people rather than the government. Um, and the providers are the physicians, nurses, whatever, that will provide the care for the people and the patients receive it. But most of the corruption that I was able to research was done by the people that draft the policies rather than the people that went through all the rigorous education to provide the health. It's just the people that are in charge and run it all. But with this $455 billion, it could be inaccurate because there could actually be more behind like legal loopholes or things that we would normally see as normal business practices that we're just blind to. So my first point is pharmaceutical kickbacks. Let me define it because it's a not a known term in my opinion, and it's where pharmaceutical companies will bribe doctors or big name health programs to promote their product. Um, Here's a specific case I want to talk about, and it's about Omnicare, which is a pharmacy product service, and this involved them paying other people to promote their products over $100 million for them to profit. And this went to court, and ultimately they had to pay more than what they actually received. And it's just an example of how these big name products will abuse pharmacy products just to promote their things rather than doing it for the good of the people. However, this is kind of weird because there is actually a law in effect that specifically prohibits this. And here is the specific law. It's defined as prohibited conduct. The act prohibits attempted as well as completed kickbacks, which include any money, fees, commission, credit, gift, gratuity, things of value, or compensation of any kind. The act also provides that the inclusion of kickback amounts in contract prices is prohibited conduct in itself. So this is completely illegal, but we still see it commonly today. Here's a cool thing I found, and it's talking about doctors and top five specialties, which includes orthopedic surgeons, plastic surgeons, neurosurgery, and it says what percentage of them have been offered any money to promote drugs for pharmacy companies, and in some states it goes as high as 90%, and this is in 2014 when it was banned over 28 years ago, and it just shows how corrupt these companies will get just to promote a product. Overbilling and wasting resources. This is when doctors, hospitals charge more than what is absolutely necessary or for services that were not provided. This is very common in hospitals today where, say, a doctor's not making what they want, they'll overpay the bill and maybe add an unnecessary fee or charge that you didn't actually receive. A specific one that was a huge scandal was when the United Healthcare overcharged Medicare. They cheated them out of billions of dollars and falsified records. And this just shows it can be a little issue, but also at the same time, such a big issue. And my point on wasting resources is all of the physicians and nurses, I would say, are resources to help people receive the care they want. However, these nurses are not treated the best. So here is a stat: 4 times more prevalent than other industries is violence in industry, and 50% of nurses reported violence from physicians or officials, and also 20% of them quit, and around $53 million was wasted of resources just from the abuse itself. So that definitely needs to be fixed in the future, but I'll go over that later in this project. I have a video here. That's a recent ad that was on the Super Bowl by Hims and Hers. I thought it was a great example of.
Obesity is America's deadliest epidemic. This is America. 74% of us are overweight, and obesity leads to 500,000 deaths each year. Well, baby Jimmy. This is America. Something's broken. It's not our bodies, it's the system. Welcome to Weight Loss in America, a $160 billion industry that feeds on our failure. There are medications that work, but they're priced for profits, not patients. This system wasn't built to help us. It was built to keep us sick and stuck. But not anymore. Hims and Hers offers life-changing weight loss medications. They're affordable, doctor trusted, and formulated in the USA. You get a treatment plan designed by a doctor to fit your body, goals, and lifestyle. You deserve to feel great in your body. This is the future of healthcare. This is Hims and Hers. Join us in the fight for a healthier America. Obesity is a
All right. Well, I think there's some goods and some bads to that ad. Firstly, I would say it's good because it explains how obesity is an epidemic, and it says how majority of Americans do fall in the weight class of being overweight. And I also think that it's good because it emotionally appeals to the people to see that is an issue to their health, and that they need to realize, everyone in the US needs to realize about what's going on with it. So that was pretty much the first 30 seconds of the ad. However, why I think this ad was corrupt was the last 30 seconds, because the drug does contain semaglutide, which is a very dangerous drug that's not actually FDA approved for this specific company. Has a serious increase in thyroid cancer from women, and it also contributes to a lot of kidney damage, AKIs and CKDs. Um, it says that it's a problem solution. However, this drug takes a long time for it to actually have a noticeable effect, and they'll say that the problem will be seemingly instantly solved, which is not true at all. They're not transparent about the semaglutide and the inherent risk. They'll always say like, "Oh, it'll have these certain effects like diarrhea or whatever." Not. but they never really go into depth what could be really, really bad. Pretty much the last 30 seconds of it. So the industry definitely needs a change. It's a profit driven industry. I think it needs to go to public and be funded by the government so that it can be more seen by everyone, I guess, because I don't know. But the funds are not used properly because it's a private industry and we, the people, can't really see what they're doing with it because I think it should be funded publicly. And I think it needs to shift to universal health care so that everyone can receive the proper treatment that they need and not it be overly expensive that the poor and the needy can't afford, which is a huge problem. And even though we spend so much resources on this, the life expectancy for us is considerably low. And besides the 455 billion we waste for fraud, we also waste an additional 500 billion on our bad spending habits for the industry. So, how should Christians address this issue? I found three verses that I thought were really powerful to address injustice as a whole. My first one was Proverbs 28:18. The one whose walk is blameless is kept safe, but the one whose ways are perverse will fall into the pit. I think this is important because it highlights importance of moral integrity and also the consequences of being dishonest. Another one I found that was good was Job 5:16, which says, "So the poor have hope, and injustice shuts her mouth. Those who have acted unjustly will be silenced and regardless rendered meaningless." And I believe that the poor should be able to receive the care like it was saying the poor should have meaning. Matthew 25:36, I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. This is shown to provide those who are suffering and in need, and they should receive the proper care like the people that can actually afford it. I thought three words were great for how we should address injustice is compassion, integrity, and advocacy. I would say compassion comes from the heart. It's the motivation to help those that can't receive what they actually need. The integrity, which is the ethics and why we should provide for them because everyone's human, everyone's made in God's image, and everyone should receive the same care. And our hands is the advocacy to actually provide the care that we should be giving to everybody. So, how should we prevent corruption in the future? I think the government needs to take more accountability by regulating pharmaceutical companies so these kickbacks won't be in place. Monitor health billings to make sure that it's proper and there's no false claims or billings on it. I think we should have comprehensive healthcare reforms, um, like in United Healthcare. I mean, universal healthcare coverage where everyone should receive the proper care no matter their circumstances. I think we should go to public, like I said earlier, so that we can have, and then promote public health research. I think promoting public research rather than private will show what these people are actually doing behind the scenes so we can actually know what's going on because it's kind of hard to find things regarding this topic. I think they need to be more transparent by allowing the people to have public access to these records to make sure that they're being right and ethical. And I think we should have clear contracts. Additionally, I think we should collaborate with places that already have universal healthcare coverage so we can know what to do in the future and to ultimately pave a path to getting there in the future. Questions? help reconcile on one hand majority of the corruption be taking place on the government level, yeah, and at the end of all getting earlier the most corruption. Help reconcile that. Like, yeah. What I meant by that is I think right now, currently, the government is the most corrupt. I was trying to say that the government should probably get more biblical um, worldview, and they're the ones that ultimately will cause the most corruption. So they need to be the ones to help out the most. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that they need to be in the right because it starts with them, I guess, because they have the most power and most control over the people. I guess that makes sense.
While we're on, can you go back to that chart really quick? Or I can't. So, because I had a similar question. When you talk about government officials, policymakers, that was really helpful for me to visualize. The payers include, like in the United States, in the American system right now, government is already putting money towards healthcare. There, Medicaid, Medicare, everything from vision to research, grants, and funding, and all that. So this is like whenever we hear the term thrown around every once in a while, a single payer system. Right? The suggestion is that the list that you have in that box of payers, that goes down to one person. Because right now, like we have a private system, we have a privatized system, but not really because the government's so involved in it, anyways, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So like my question more specifically than Pastor Nathan was getting at was like, so how do we not distinguish between those first two boxes, but it seems possible to make the first box accountable. I'm sorry. Making the payers, making that second box accountable to the first box. Does that make sense? So here's the specific question I had. What's the difference between the regulations that we make about healthcare, about how it's funded, paid for, financing? What's the difference between the people who are making those laws and policies and the people who are actually paying the bills, who actually
Yeah.
Allocating money to
Yeah.
those things?
Well, so for like college, most of the funds they'll receive through endowments from the people that were alumni. Similar to this, multi-billionaires will fund to charity systems or to things that they'll think is important, like cancer research, and they're the ones that fund all of it. But the government's the people that draft the policies for all of this, because I guess government officials always have the most power in the United States. So although the government should be the ones putting in the most money, the majority of the money that they actually receives from the people that pay, I guess.
People that pay me.
Like the multi-billion.
Oh, I see, yeah. Well, and to me, like that's kind of the big point here is that, please correct me if I'm wrong about this, and if that is a question, please answer. So what I'm seeing is this is the one of the few industries in the American system where the money going towards providing the service is not the people who are receiving the service. So, for instance, a restaurant business, most of the money being made by a restaurant comes from the consumer, comes from the person actually eating the meal, right? Mm-hmm. Not so with medicine, where it seems like most of the money going towards research, funding, production, medical, all the stuff that it takes to pay doctors and so on. Most of that money is not coming from patients. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it is correct. Payers will give the most money, but close second would be the patients because they're the ones that are getting the overpaid bills, unlike the people that would be in European countries. That European countries are all paid by the government, but United States is different, just based off the capitalistic government and how it's only pretty much only paid by the payers and the patients.
Yeah, it's kind of a hot take because Americans we love our capitalism, and yet I mean another chart we won't have to go back to. It's kind of like the proofs in the pudding that we're spending a lot of money on health. We don't seem to be that healthy, so maybe we just take a look at the system.
Yeah. Adding on to that, I thought Matt's presentation was really good, talking about how what we consume is not what we actually think we're consuming, and there's a lot of bad whatever nutrients in there that we don't actually know that we're eating, but we get tricked into purchasing certain things, which is a big reason why I think that our so many Americans are unhealthy and stuff.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of monopolizing this. I got one more question. Anybody? Yes, y'all got anything?
He doesn't necessarily bring up the corruption, and that's something that I just wanted to view. He really only talks to me about his experience working as a physician and all the stories, like crazy patients or whatever. But he never really talks or goes into depth about the abuse in the healthcare system or the corruption happening. So, yeah.
That was a distinction I liked early on. Was like, and again, those boxes are really helpful. Healthcare providers, like that doesn't seem to be where really any of the problem here for the financial stuff is.
So, like, one real, when I was primary residence, and he would actively talk about everything. It was really weird. Like, it was goal is just to push it. Anyway, okay. Second question I had: why do you think why is there so much pushback?
I think transparencies would be great, because what I meant by that is transparency in the billing, because and what they're actually receiving in their care, because a lot of the time these doctors will, or the system will, toss in unnecessary billing that they weren't transparent about, and what they actually did not care for them, because a lot of hospitals want to profit as much as they want to, which is why I think the industry is so corrupt, because they're choose profit over proper care. And I think the resistance to transparency is just the evil wickedness of human nature because of the fall, and they'll go to whatever measure they want to make a profit.
More question, and this is just curiosity. Like a lot of the people in the room, y'all haven't had the experience of having to go pay for medication like that. Maybe you have, but your parent, you're probably under parents' insurance and whatnot. So insurance, there have been several times, talking about anecdotal stories, there have been several times where we went to go get medication and the option, we have insurance, Southside provides us health insurance. But it's kind of hilarious to me that whatever I'm paying in, whatever's coming out of my paycheck goes towards health insurance. But I go to the counter at the pharmacy, you talk a lot about pharmaceutical kickback. What my There's a different price on offer, same medication, there are multiple prices on offer depending on what kind of insurance I have. In some cases, even it's better if I just don't have insurance. Which is incredible to me that like again, forget cap like that's not even talk about not being a free market. It doesn't matter what the price point is. It's a matter of what you're able. That's essentially what the question comes down to. So how much of this like you can talk about the actual pharmacy companies, the medical manufacturers, you can talk about the healthcare providers, like all that stuff. How much of this is just like that middleman of an insurance company that's just kind of playing ball to see how much money they can get out of either party involved?
Well, a lot of these companies will get a patent on their product, like I learned in Mrs. Bauer's class, and they'll monopolize on the product. So they can pretty much set the price to however much they want because they're the only ones that actually sell the specific drug. So, for example, the EpiPen has gone up a lot in the past 10 years, and that's only because they're the only ones selling it. But I think that's corrupt because I think they should lower the price because people need that in order to survive allergic reactions. But they raise the price just because they want to make a profit. And about the insurance, I didn't really do much looking into that. So I don't know if I could really answer that one.
Yeah. No, again, just curiosity, but again, like multifaceted as this issue is, maybe that's another like avenue to try to figure this stuff out. Classmates, y'all got any questions, comments for?
Is it?
Billionaires. Why is it that we're still having to benefit from
Well, we're a private industry, so we'll have to pay higher prices regardless. But the inflation from the wasted resources, from the corruption, is why prices keep going up because the industry still wants to make a profit. And because prices keep going up because of these wasted resources, they're making more money. So they're pretty much just a greed perspective, I guess, why they keep raising the prices. And the reason why the health rate is so low is just because of a lot of factors on how we advertise health and how we promote eating and stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
yes,
The one in charge of Medicare.
Well, that's more insurance.
I mean, I could give an opinion. I don't think murder is ever justifiable. Um, um, even though he, even though he may have caused harm to a lot of people because of the way his fundings were and how he didn't give proper care to people, I still don't think it's ever right to murder someone, even if there is a huge support for whatever reason.
there does seem to be something like inherently, whatever you want to say about the business and the org charts and the finances, and I've heard of like lawsuits involving the like forensic accountants having to go through figuring out who's getting money where and all that. Like there's a lot of logistics and practical. There's a big practical side to this, but also there seems to be something inherently like human and inhuman about having a cure for something, having something that can definitively help someone. Versus, like, I would love like this is like a whole other project maybe of not just healthcare, but like I would encourage like some kind of historical study of how many times someone has invented that can be call it a cure, call it treatment, call it whatever, and they're just like definitively not wanting to make money off of it because like just the anecdotes off the top of my head, I'm thinking like these are some really genuinely good people that want to in order to help someone, not to become rich. Like you mentioned, patents start getting made, and you start getting these intellectual property rights and all this stuff, and there just really seems to be something, or whatever your worldview is, like this young man that goes and shoots somebody. I don't know, like I kind of agree that like this was an evil thing being done, profiting off of keeping people unhealthy. Just seems evil, right? But also probably not the best solution, right? Probably not the best, not a good. It's not a solution. I don't even know how to say it right. But this is every once in a while. I just got to remind us, like as technical as these projects get, that's what makes it a Bible project. That's what makes it a project for a Bible class, is because hey, Christians who are going to be involved in these types of fields, we should be able to make a difference. Y'all remember the thought experiment a long, long time ago? 2 hospitals, one full of Christians, one not. Should there be a difference? Yeah, it seems like there totally should be a difference, right? Right.
That's why organ donation is life-saving medicine, life-saving things that the government has. But found a loophole with like cost them that much.
Same chemical, same
Medicine.
yeah.
So we're not really sure what's going to happen when
I'll talk to y'all. No one who is a part of this system was sitting in a classroom when they were saying, I want to make this problem. And like, no one did. And yet, there's a whole bunch of people that are going to make their lifestyle a little bit better. Felt in the moment entirely justified. A whole bunch of people, probably in life, well-meaning and trying to take care of their small but significant. The only way to fix it, what's going to be costly for y'all is some of y'all are going to be in rooms. Be a question of costs are coming from money, but we're going to do this. Up in that room will be scary and cost you a job. But good gracious, you speaking up in those only way. One, it's the only way change is going to happen. But two, representation of Jesus' kingdom moving forward. And it's costly and risky and scary. But it's the only way it changes.
Oh, anything? Thanks, man.
Yeah.